Happy Friday, Andy.
Happy Friday night with Jesus.
Yup.
We're ready to go.
Yeah, we are.
Part of that's because we were excited about where we were last night.
Yeah, we were in Malachi 3, everyone. We got decently far,
We did for us.
considering
For
we
me.
got 5 verses.
Mm-hmm.
There's some meaty verses.
Wait. In Bible study last night at Lakeview, how many verses did you get through?
We didn't have Bible study at Lakeview last
No, we had Bible study last night. How many verses did you
No,
get
we
through?
didn't.
Wait, did you get through no verses?
0, because we didn't have it.
Wow, you can never make fun of me again.
Nope.
Good. All right.
All right, so Malachi 3,
Yep.
6.
Yep.
All right, you just stop me whenever. As usual.
That's
okay?
where we are. That's where we were.
Yeah, no, we finished 5.
Got it.
Okay. For I am the Lord, I change not.
We've talked about that. We went on and on about that before.
I don't know, I was kind of hoping I would just read it at the end of last one, but I didn't.
Yeah, so...
I change not. Therefore, you sons of Jacob are not consumed.
Well, look at that. See, we talked about the God never changes. We've
Spices
talked about
it
that
up.
and all kinds of things. But here's one of the reasons why you should be happy God never changes. Because you're still alive. Right? Like
Oh my gosh.
how
Yeah.
important is it that God doesn't give in to human emotions?
Oh, yeah, I've said that many times.
Yeah.
He is not an emotional creature.
It is...
If he was,
We would be...
done. So,
There you go.
I mean, if you were God, wouldn't you have pushed the button?
Yeah, well, listen, the neat thing about this is God talking. So we talked about in the Bible that you have, the Old Testament, it has red letters, right?
Yeah, good
so
stuff.
it tells us where God is actually speaking
Yeah.
and where the prophets are speaking.
Yeah.
I laugh because in like Joel and Amos and Malachi and those kind of places, it's mostly red. Like those poor guys, they get to write a book, but they don't do very much in the book. Right?
Very important, though, that they get those words right.
That's exactly right. The more red letters, the more pressure there is to actually say that right.
Yes.
Right? But what Malachi is having to write here for God is saying, I don't change, and you better be really thankful that I don't change, because it's really the reason that you're alive. And again, we've talked about lately, how do you get the proper perspective? Right? How when everything in you wants to not love, when everything in you wants to strike back at people, when everything at you wants to do these things, how do you get the proper perspective?
I talk about that the most with forgiveness.
Yep. Yeah.
Because I say, like, I find it easy to forgive. That doesn't mean I don't get mad.
Right.
Because I say the part in love that I struggle with the most is being easily provoked. Like, I get mad really easy, unfortunately, but I forgive really easy. So it's like, is it that bad, really? If I get mad at you? Not really. So it'll be over soon. But I think I forgive easily because I said, like, I think about how much I suck and how much I need God, right? And, like,
Yep.
how much I
Yep.
need Jesus and how much I don't deserve anything. So it's easy for me to just look at you and not think I'm better than you. And to just know, like, we're the same.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
why shouldn't I forgive you? I take it very seriously when God says, you know, you're forgiven the way that you forgive. So, yeah, I look at it a lot that way, and I just say, like, we're the same. And it's easy for me in that aspect to do that.
Well, that proper perspective is super important, right? That when we have the proper perspective, we realize, man, we're super thankful that God's not a whole bunch of things, that he doesn't a whole bunch of things, and that he is a whole bunch of things, right? Yeah. And so we're thankful, especially when we tie this in with talking about love, you know, as you were talking about with forgiveness, and we're thankful God doesn't keep a record of wrongs. We're thankful that God protects, but his protection, we've talked a lot lately about protection. God's protection for me isn't always what I want. He doesn't protect me always the way that I would like him to. But he knows the bigger picture, and so he can protect more Weller for me. He can protect
More
perfectly
Weller?
for me because he knows the whole picture, right? Again, God knows the whole picture. Part of the idea about knowing the whole picture is he therefore doesn't consume us. He doesn't let his wrath and anger consume us. He really ultimately has put Jesus in between us and his wrath. You just have to choose Jesus.
Right, it's up to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so even from the days of your fathers, you are gone away from my ordinances and have not kept them. Return unto me, and I will return unto you, saith the Lord. But you said, wherein shall we return? You want me to stop?
Yeah.
You're looking at me.
Do you want to go first?
I
would
mean,
steal everything.
From the days of your fathers, you've gone away from my ordinances. I was just talking last night about this, about reading, the first time I was reading through the Old Testament, right? And the first thing, you're like, man, these Israelites, they're just stupid. They just don't get it. You're like, what? Like, you just saw the Red Sea get parted, and you're doing all this stuff, and you're getting manna, whatever that is, and you want quail or whatever. Like, seriously, like, what is wrong with these people? And then I'm like, what is wrong with you? And then I'm like, I got to Isaiah chapter 1.
Yeah.
And I'm reading it, and it's about the Israelites again. But I'm like, I'm reading it, and I'm like, oh, this is the United States right now.
Yeah.
And then it hit me, like, as someone would say, a 2x4. And I was like, oh, this is the United States. Oh, wait. Yeah, we suck. Like, we're the same since the days of your fathers. Like, from day one. Like, people have not changed. We've been the same since the very beginning. And we will always be like this until, everything's fixed.
It's so funny that God points out that he doesn't change, but we haven't changed.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's funny because none of us change.
No.
He doesn't, neither do we.
Well,
but we think we do.
we do. And we expect that we do. Right? So we look at other people and we judge them based on the expectation that you're going to totally change whatever was wrong with you.
Yeah.
Right? It's why the record of wrongs is so important, right? If we keep a record of wrongs, then I'm going to keep reminding you you've not changed. But if I don't keep a record of wrong, then I don't have to worry about that.
Yeah.
Right? And now all of a sudden I can allow for change to happen because change is going to be, it can be minuscule in nature. Right? If you're used to having a 1 hour knockdown, drag out, whatever it is, right? Fight with your spouse once a week, and you start limiting that to 59 minutes, then 58 minutes, 57 minutes, 56 minutes, there's change. Is there not change? There is change. It's just not the change that everybody wants, but it is change, right? It's an intentional, you know what? We're learning, right? This time after 59 minutes, I got it right. This time after 50 minutes, I got it right. So somewhere along the line, there's hope that we're not going to have this conversation. Right? We're not going to get to the same place. Why? Because I am learning quicker, right? And so it's important that we understand that God's saying here, like, I haven't changed, but neither have you. And then he's crying out to them to return to him, right? Return to me, return to me, return to me. It is crazy that the Israelites would say, what do you mean? Right? Like, so they say, return to, but how shall we return?
Right.
Meaning, like, we haven't done anything wrong. Like, what do you mean? What?
Yes, this is the mind-numbing part.
Right, but at the same time, I've been there a lot, where God's like, Annie, you're the man. What do you mean I'm the man? Well, what do you mean that I have a problem? What do you mean? Like, God, I said in that meeting. And you know that it was righteous anger that I yelled at those people, right? It wasn't gossip. It was like because I really care and I want to pray. It wasn't that I was trying to manipulate and get my own way. It was the right way. I mean, it was what everybody could see that it's what needed to be done. And God says, yeah, that's your perspective.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I don't. I think it's key that he says, you return to me and I will return to you. But because, I don't know, it's somewhere later in here, right? Like, the New Testament only people would say, no. No, what do you mean, return? God doesn't ever leave you.
Yeah.
He will never forsake you, right? What does that mean? He'll turn it.
Well, you better explain what it means.
It's what I talked about in Seeds. It's like, okay, well, if you're disobedient, he doesn't have to protect you. He does not have to be. Like, he does when you're out of ordinance, right? When you're sinning, God doesn't fellowship with that.
Right.
Right? So you're not it just doesn't work that way. You can't twist it and say, well, God doesn't leave me, God doesn't forsake me. So like, he'll just hang out with me while I'm doing all this bad stuff and like he'll protect me while I'm doing all this bad. Maybe he will protect you from something, and that is good. Congratulations. You are very blessed, but he does not have to.
Isn't it funny that it's why that principle right there is why we've put God always loves, God is love, because now God has
we
to
can do whatever we want.
All those things while we do whatever we want.
Yeah, well, he clearly says,
right.
And because this is in red. Return to me and I'll return to you.
Yeah,
so that means he left you.
No, it means that I can be at the bar and I just hold God to having to always protect me. And not keeping a record of wrongs against me. And God isn't going to be self-seeking. He wants what's best for me, not what's best for him. And all of these things, we just go down through the list and it's just all about us.
Yeah, what we don't know though is what's best for us.
It goes back
we think we know what's best for us, but God really knows what's best for us. And sometimes it is for him to leave.
Well, we always talk about love is always permissible. I love you, so I'm going to permit whatever you want to do. Now, sometimes if you love people, you can't permit what they're going to do.
Nope.
Super important.
Okay, so they said, where shall we return?
Yep.
God said, will a man rob God? Yet you have robbed me. But you say, wherein have we robbed you? In tithes and offerings. You are cursed with a curse. For you have robbed me, even this whole nation. Wait, does that mean God puts curses on people?
God. Wow, look at that. No, God, I think it's the same concept as does God send people to hell? Right? Again, I want to say the short answer is God said to Abraham, I'm going to bless those who bless you, curse those who curse you. So it's a pretty simple, God curses, right? But at the same time, we're like, well, cursing seems to be evil, right? So is cursing an evil thing? And then you're like, well, can God do evil things?
Well, didn't God create evil?
God created the ability for there to be evil, right? Which is just a standard against him.
If God didn't create it, then who created it?
Once God created a standard, he created also another standard, right? The second, it's funny because we think of it as if I have a piece of pie, right? I can say this because you won't eat it, so it's okay. I can share it with you. But if I take a piece of pie and I bring that to my table and I sit down in front of it, it's my pie. The whole thing is mine. The second that I divide it in two, I now have by nature two pieces of pie, right? I did that. I created two pieces. And so God, everything's his. The second that he created a standard, didn't say the standard is all of this, but it said, no, here's the standard. You could do this, but here's the standard. He split it in half, and all of a sudden now he created good and evil because of that. Right? Now everybody's going to be like, no, he just got off the deep end. He said God created evil.
He did. He created everything. Because then you're saying someone else has the ability to create.
God created a tree that had fruit that was the ability to give good and evil knowledge, right? Like, so, yeah, the answer is
God created evil.
Right?
I mean, there's a good reason for it, though.
But when we look at it, we don't like, God never curses people. Oh,
yes,
well, Jesus cursed the fig tree, so you might want to be really careful.
God
right? Like, so again, the short answer is, yep, God does curse. But when you say it that way, immediately I want to stop and be like, well, wait. I want to make sure I get this right theologically, and the answer should be, no, God never does anything wrong. But he already told Abraham, I'm going to do this. Oh, by the way, he cursed the ground and made it hard for Adam and Eve. So there's a problem.
You can't say God doesn't do anything wrong because God decides what's wrong.
And
we think we say what's wrong and what's right, but no, that's what he says.
Right, but you could also go, did God curse or did man curse themselves? Right? So if God says, hey, listen, if you do this, this is what's going to happen.
Yeah, if then.
And I choose to do it, did God do it or did I do it? probably I did
Well,
it.
it's like sending them to hell. It's like, does God really send you to hell? Well, yes, God set up that system.
Yeah.
Yeah, technically, God does, but you have the ability to choose.
That's right.
But does God push the final button that says, here's where you go? Here's the chute you go down? Yup.
Well,
God does make
Yeah.
that choice.
once you make the choice, God says, okay.
Right. Like, he did set up that system.
It's a hard thing because God, like when we get an endowment or we get, something, our parents leave us money, right? They set up usually with rules, like of, hey, you can get this much here and this much here and this and this and this and this. You have to follow the rules to get the money. If you follow the rules, you get the money.
Right.
If you don't follow the rules, then somebody, the executor over it all, has to make the decision to enforce the rules.
Right.
Right? Like, that's the part that I think we all think God is joking about. He loves us so much, he'll never,
Loving
ever,
God
ever
would never
enforce
send
the
people
rule.
to hell. I
Right.
hate that.
If the rule is you have to choose him to go to heaven, you have to choose him in a tangible way, then guess what? If you choose not to choose him, he's going to enforce the rules. And we just all think he's joking.
I'm not joking.
Yeah. And that's some people are going to learn that the hard way.
A lot of people.
Exactly. But he goes on here to accuse them, and we've talked about it before, of robbing him. All right, it's one thing for me to accuse you of robbing me, right? You robbed me of an M&M, you robbed me of a moment, you robbed me of whatever. That's a totally different thing when God says, you robbed me. And what he says specifically is, you didn't bring things to the storehouse. That's a hard thing, because you know what? The storehouse is still in place for God right now. You didn't bring your gifts and talents to me. You didn't bring and allow me to use them. Right? You made an apple pie for you, but you didn't make an apple pie for me to use. Now, that doesn't mean you always have to make 2 apple pies. That's nice. You can send one to me. But God says, like, listen, you have to be willing. You have to be willing to give me access to the resources that I've gifted you with. And he doesn't even want the whole thing.
Well, it's the whole thing of, like, you're gifted whatever and you do it for a living, but then you don't want to do it for God.
Yeah, we talk about that.
It's the same thing. It's the same kind of...
Yeah, exactly. All right, I'm ready.
Okay. So bring ye all the tithes into the storehouse, that there may be meat in my house, and prove me now herewith, saith the Lord of hosts, if I will not open you the windows of heaven and pour out a blessing, that there shall be not room enough to receive it. And I will rebuke... let's wait.
Yeah.
I don't want to get stuck on some tithing conversation for an hour, but it's not... Again, it's not... To me, this is... You can talk about that, and yes, it's a thing. But it's also... To me, this is, the typical Old Testament, if then. If you do this, if you follow the ordinances and all the things, here's your blessing. If you don't, here's your curse. Like, it's just the same thing, it's just a different topic, right?
Yep.
And it's all throughout the Old Testament of, do what I say, and I'll give you a treat.
Yep.
And if you don't, then you go in a timeout.
So,
Like, this is very simple.
when you read verse 10, right,
Yeah.
the last part of verse 10, when God gives his if-then thing, and he gets to the then part, right, what does it say exactly again?
If I will not open the windows of heaven and pour you out a blessing, that there shall not be room enough to receive it.
Yeah, that's very interesting, because in the ESV version it says, for you a blessing until there is no more need. Right? And I think this is where people get caught up in the wording of this. It matters, and for perception, is it that God's just gonna keep pouring and pouring and pouring and pouring and pouring, never stop pouring, or is it that God's going to pour on you a blessing to fulfill a need? Right? If your idea is that God's just going to keep giving and giving and giving and giving and giving and giving and giving, well, that sounds really great, right? But then you're going to be really disappointed if it stops.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that, again, the concept is the same. The concept is, listen, if you give to God, he's going to give back to you. Right? Overflowing. The Bible's super clear about that. The problem is it doesn't happen always in my timing. Right? So, God, I've been faithful. I've been great. I've been trying to do this right. And now you're going to get back to me. And you're just going to pour and pour and pour and pour and pour. And I'm never going to be able, my bank account's never going to be able to hold it all and all these things. No, God says, give to me and I will give to you. But it's always still at the appropriate time, place, all the things. It's always about God.
I literally talked about this last night because there was something that I found myself worshiping that was a godly desire that I had in my life, but I ended up being fixated on it and wanting it. And I asked God what I should focus on. And he said ministry. Like, he told me what to do in these last few years. So I took that godly desire and I had to say, like, all right, I'm not focusing on it at all. I'm not doing anything with it. I'm letting it go. And I had to go the next step, and I had to say, truly, or else it would drive me nuts because I can't do it. I had to say, okay, like, this was a godly desire. This is not a bad thing for me to want. However, I cannot worship it, and it cannot be on a pedestal in my life. So, like, I not only had to say, like, okay, God, I'm going to focus on this other thing, but I had to say, the godly desire will be fulfilled.
Yeah.
God will give me the desires of my heart if I listen to him. But I also had to add on to that and say, but I understand it might not be until I'm in heaven. Like, we don't think, like, God says, I'll give you the desires of your heart. He doesn't say when. He doesn't say it'll be while you're on earth. And we just assume.
See, that's fascinating.
I had to accept it could be anytime.
If God knows that you're going to accept him, or accept Jesus as Lord and Savior, you're going to have eternity with him. Is it possible that some of the things that God promises us aren't even for this earth?
Yeah.
That they're for the new earth.
Yeah, of course.
Right. So we've made it really, clear that we're going to get onto this new heaven, new earth thing, and we're going to sit around for eternity, sit around in white robes, and we're just going to sing all day long. We're not going to do anything.
No, we're going to have jobs.
I don't know that's
we're gonna
that's
do
biblical, right? But if we're going to do something, we've said there in heaven, the Bible's super clear. It says in heaven there isn't going to be there's not a giving of marriage in heaven. It does not say that about the new earth that I know of, right? I don't think it says that. It says specifically they ask a story about, hey, there's a brother who has a wife and he dies, and then 6 of his other brothers die. Who's going to be married to them in heaven? I think is what it says.
Yep, that's true.
And then he says to them, that's not what heaven's about. Like, that's not going to happen. Right? But he doesn't say to them that that's not what the new earth is going to be about.
Totally different thing.
If the original earth process that God had was, hey, Adam and Eve, be fruitful and multiply.
And be together.
Right.
Right. He said this is his wife.
Are we not, is the new earth going to be, we all live separate, unisex lives, forever and ever? That seems to be against what God even created us to be. Right? So we look at that and say, I don't know. That's the easy answer for me, is I don't know. But when I look at the husband and wife thing, is it possible that what God is saying to people is like, hey, I've got promises for you in a different place.
I mean, we know someone who just died who had a desire to be married and have children and never got them.
Right.
And was under the impression that God promised her the children.
Yeah.
But she died. So do we say, like, he failed on his promise? He lied, or she misinterpreted, or what?
That's what we're going to say. Is we're going to say that, well, she just got it wrong.
Yeah, because God doesn't lie. So she just got it wrong. But how do we know she doesn't have children right now?
How do we know whatever we know? Like, we don't know anything.
Yeah,
but what we need to be careful about is, like, okay, hey,
we can't put a timetable on God.
Exactly. We need to not. I'm trying so hard to use smaller words and smaller phrases, and you're like, we just need to make sure that we allow God to be God.
Yeah.
Right. But God does.
Well, that's what happens when you truly when you delight yourself in Him. When you just worry about Him.
Right.
When you just focus on Him, the days don't matter, the time doesn't matter, none of it matters. Every day you're just about God, and you are fulfilled in that day.
Yeah, so I think that's so important, because I think that's what how the new earth is going to be all about is we just got it right. We're focused
Yeah.
perfectly on what God wants us to be focused on, right? But now while we're on this earth, it ties into what we did talk about and see. It's hey, if you're focused on God and what He has for you, and you're being obedient to Him, then He is going to supply for your every need. You're not going to have to worry about it. So you can give away the $50 if God tells you to do that, because when you need the $50, there'll be another $50 there. But we have this idea of like, Lord, if I just go out and give $50 away, you're just going to keep sending me $50 and $50 and $50, and then we get upset. No, God says, hey, listen, I'm going to send you I'm going to outgive you at a specific point. Yeah, love it.
Should I keep going?
Oh, you should.
Okay. And I will rebuke the devourer for your sakes, and he shall not destroy the fruits of your ground. Neither shall your vine cast her fruit before the time in the field, saith the Lord of hosts.
Yep. So God makes it very clear here, right?
Well, do what you're supposed to do, and you're protected.
And you're protected.
Wait, be obedient, and you're protected. Be where you're supposed to be, and you're under His protection. Oh, yeah. I think I'm a prophet.
Yeah, you are. Because you've been on this kick for a very long time. Listen, there are times when where we just want to buck this whole idea.
It's so simple.
And
he just rewords it 4,000 times for us simple-minded folk.
But he makes
Can't get it.
We were talking about this earlier today with some people. Like, we have an enemy. Mm-hmm. We have
the devourer.
Enemy, and he's a devourer, right? We were talking about a verse with Paul, who was Saul at the time, and we were talking about how my version said slaughter. like he was a slaughterer. Right? That's a totally different phrase than a killer, right? Like, there's a difference between slaughtering and killing.
Yeah,
right?
Slaughter's vicious.
Yeah,
and personal.
Exactly, and very thorough, and all of these things, right? So you look at this, at the wording here, and you say, you have a devourer. Mm-hmm. Look at, a devourer doesn't mean, let me take a little bite out of you and you can still survive. It means, I'm going to eat the whole thing.
Well, you know what I think is interesting is, it says, rebuke the devourer for your sake, and he shall not destroy the fruits of your ground.
Yeah.
So it's like, he's not just looking. God, the enemy can't touch you unless God says so.
No doubt.
But what did God do with Job? What was the first thing He did with Job? He let the enemy have all the fruits of his ground.
Yep. Everything that he did.
You can destroy everything in his life, but don't touch him.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So like, I just find that interesting. Like, we don't think about that, right? Like, oh, God might let him take everything else. Well, everything around you that's your fruit that's important. All your things you work for, all the things you worship over God.
Yep. You better think that thing really thoroughly, right? God allows the enemy to devour all of those things. That doesn't just mean, the extra things you have laying around the house and outside in the yard. That means
the things you worship.
The things you worship, which could be at your workplace. What if God allowed him to devour your office, your title, your position, your authority, your
doing what's good for you, by the way.
That's right. But
because it is good for you.
Look at with your children. God, what if God allowed the enemy? He didn't spare Job, the children, right?
Somebody told me last night that they prayed a very dangerous prayer and asked God to remove anything in their life that stopped them from serving Him.
Yeah.
And I said, "Ooh."
Yeah.
That can mean people, right?
Yeah.
Like people. He could take people.
Not only could he
will.
Going to. He simply is going to.
Yes.
Right? Because we associate people with ministry. Right, so we look at certain things. Look at your church. Look at the ministry you're involved in, and it's all about people. Who's the Sunday school superintendent? Person, right? Who's the children's church person? Mm-hmm. Who's the Sunday school person? Who's the youth person? Who's the adult person? Who leads women? Who does hospitality? Who's a trustee? Who's a deacon? They're all people, right? And so we all the time we're associating ministry with it. As a church, when you start elevating somebody to a place where you can't live without them, that's a really tough place to be, because now it's not about God. It's about these positions, these persons, right? If your pastor left today and you still can't, and the church fell apart, that's a problem.
Good.
You've worshipped the pastor.
Yeah. Yep.
Right? If your hospitality person goes away and you can no longer provide donuts on a Sunday morning, somebody's got a problem. Right? Like these are things though that we quickly are worshiping. And so what happens? Well, of course the enemy, he wants to devour those. He wants to devour the ministries that we're trying to accomplish. I think it's funny because down here today we had a very unique Thursday. Right? A Thursday in which nothing was normal. The normal people, weren't here to video, to put, and I started thinking, I thought about this morning and went, is this discipline? Is God doing something? Is God pulling people away? Why is this? And then you look at it, it's 2:30 in the afternoon, and we've been busy nonstop. Sometimes I think we've been more busy today than other days when we've had all these people. And you look at it and say, no, the people go away, but we're still doing what we do, right? That's important. But there's a lot of time. Like this morning, I was all ready for it to be let's just go home early, be done. The enemy, he wants to devour things. He wants us to think that way. Like, hey, you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing, so you must not be doing the right things. You must not be. And God's like, no, it's about being obedient to me. Be where you're supposed to be. Then I'll protect you. Right? I'll protect your heart, your mind. How many times do we think because something's going to be different, I don't know if I want to attend. Right? Like you led Bible study last night at our church. Did you not? Did I not say to other people, Summer will be leading Bible study?
Oh, you said that, yeah.
Right. When I say that to people, they have an expectation of what that means, right? What's that mean?
I'm going to lead Bible study.
You're going to lead Bible study. And they know exactly where we're studying, do they not?
Yep.
Like we're in 1 Corinthians 14. Now we're very kind and we have leeway, and sometimes we go somewhere else, and sometimes we might talk about things we don't. But everybody who would have attended would know we're studying the Bible, right? They're not thinking we're going to church at 7 o'clock for what God has for us. They're thinking we're going to 7 o'clock for a Bible study in the book of 1 Corinthians. We're on chapter 14. Andy's leading it. Here's the deal.
Well, they should know with you or me leading it that they should just go to church thinking
whatever
God has, because that's
what's going
to happen.
They should. Now, the week before, they showed up with that intention, and we went to Mark chapter 16, started talking about it, right? Mm-hmm. In the middle of it, I got pulled away, right? You continued on with it, right? But we studied, right? We studied the word. But this Wednesday night, you defied the norm, did you not?
I did. I went rogue.
What did you do?
We just talked and prayed. We prayed and talked.
Are either one of those things advertised for our Wednesday night?
Nope. Don't care.
No. But we'd say, if we advertised Wednesday night, hey, we're going to get together at 7 o'clock and see what God has for us. That might be
nobody would show up for that.
But that might be we would walk. We'd go leave the church and go, hey, we're going for a prayer walk. We're going to walk around our community.
Yeah.
That might mean, hey, we're going for ice cream. We're just gonna spend time with each other. We're gonna eat some fish and loaves.
Yeah.
It could mean all kinds of things, right? But we have to be willing to be where we're supposed to be. And then allow God the freedom to do what He wants to do. But so many of us, we get devoured. The enemy could have devoured last night because somebody could have gone, Summer didn't do what she was supposed to do. We didn't study the Bible.
Well, I think, the right people showed up for the right reason.
There's another reason why we listen to where God wants us. Because
not all the people showed up.
And is it possible that God wouldn't want somebody with the wrong heart attitude to be there on that?
Maybe, yeah.
Maybe somebody who's really stuck on 1 Corinthians 14. They're like, we got to do it or no. God says, now be where you want to be.
Yeah, you never know.
I think that's a super long way of saying, man, this is so important because the enemy wants to devour what we're doing.
Not just us, everything around us.
Right. What if last night you had decided, no matter what, we got to do 1 Corinthians 14.
I told them. And again, thankfully the right people were there. But I said, with the last few hours that we had in this church, and one of the persons was there in those last few hours, I said, it would not be appropriate for me to ignore real life and what's going on and just checklist off 1 Corinthians 14. It just would not be. And I said, and I want the Holy Spirit to lead my things, and I don't think that would work tonight in this. And we need to do something different right now.
Right. So let me put you on the spot and say, so again, tell me again how you presented to them how you'd like to spend the first few minutes.
Oh, I said, can I just cry for a couple minutes?
So you looked at a group of people who came at 7 o'clock expecting a Bible study, and you said to them, can we just start out by letting me cry for a couple minutes?
Yeah, can I cry for a couple minutes?
How did that go over?
Amazingly well. They were like, yeah, for sure. And within 10 seconds, they were around me, hugging me. So
now there are people who would look at this and say, oh, there it is. There's that Summer. There's that Summer. She's just commandeering something that Andy was doing, and she took it over, and it became all about her. And it's all a show because, that's the norm. She just wants everybody to be about her. And so she just decided to cry. We didn't even know what she was crying about. She was just crying and taking up our time.
No, I quickly corrected them, actually, because as good people do, they didn't know what I was crying about. Well, one of them probably did, but one person said, like, we're here for you. It's okay. And I'm like, no. I'm like, it's not about me. I'm not crying for me. I had nothing wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I had nothing wrong in my life at the moment.
Right.
Everything was fine. I was good. I was crying for a lot of people around me. Like, it was just a sad few hours for people that were around me. And I was just devastated over it. And I was just like, no, like, we need to pray, and we need to talk about real life, and we need to figure this out. And we did end up bringing up a lot of scripture and looking and going through things, but not like sitting down and let's go through this verse and that verse, and but it's what we were supposed to do.
So again, the idea here is God says, listen, stay close to me, be where you're supposed to be, and then the vine of your field is going to produce the right fruit. It's not going to stop producing.
At the right time.
My version says, the fruits of your soil and your vine in the field shall not fail to bear, says the Lord of hosts. So I would look at that and I would say, is there a way that if you had done 1 Corinthians 14 last night, that there would have been no fruit from that?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
It's what you just said, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how we can do this.
No, and I would have been, like, in zombie mode.
Uh-huh. Did what you do last night bear fruit?
Oh, for sure.
Right. It had fruit, right? And so you look at that and say, like, when you're in tune with God, when you're where you're supposed to be, where you got into the production, it's going to bear fruit, right? We've had a week of object lesson in that whole thing. Right, we're at the beginning of the week. We're doing things and just going. You know what? We were maybe where we were supposed to be, but maybe we weren't doing what we were supposed to be doing, and all these things, right? And God says, see, there's no fruit when you're not putting it all together, right? And He says, listen, I want to protect your fruit growing, so put it all together.
Part of loving each other and doing like life together, and it's just not just a church checklist. It's sometimes you gotta do something else. It's still a godly thing as long as if you're loving God and you're loving each other, then it's godly, Right.
And so then God says, he finishes up this section, this little, this little contextual thing here, and He says in verse 12 what?
And all the nations shall call you blessed, for you shall be a delightsome land, saith the Lord of hosts.
Isn't that funny? We're sitting here on a Thursday talking about what you did on Wednesday night, saying, yeah, that's a delight because you chose to stay under God's protection, do all the things, and then we can look at it and go, God delights in that. But other people can now look at this and say, hey, we see what God did. We benefited. There were people last night who benefited. There were people this morning who benefited from what you did last night because you were praying for people, right? You were for people. Yeah. And so now all of a sudden people are delighting, and thank goodness that Summer and crew decided not to do this. Yeah. Thank goodness they decided to be obedient, be where they were supposed to be.
There were people that we needed to pray for.
I think of that in so many different practical ways, right? I think about that, like sometimes if you're in a store, right, you're in Walmart or something like that, and you think about all the things that have to happen for you to be behind or in front of somebody in line, right? I mean, like you're just one.
All the
Oh, I
puzzle
forgot
pieces.
this for
Yep.
being there, right? But if you're in line, right, and this person all of a sudden forgets something, right? This person all of a sudden, forgets something, they have to go back in it, and you're in line behind them, and you're like, that's fine, good, okay. You're the right person to be behind them.
Yeah.
If they forgot their wallet, and you're like, I can pay the $2 for that,
Yeah.
type of, like, it's amazing. Like, all of a sudden, you're right where you're supposed to be. And I think of how many times the enemy must know this kind of stuff, because how hard is it to get out our door? How hard is it for us to get making a video? How
Yeah,
hard is
sometimes.
it to get us to where we need to be?
It's hard. Gotta just push through.
Beautiful. Now you let me preach the whole time.
Trust God.
Yeah.
That's it, Friday Nighters.
Beautiful.
Trust God. Do what you're supposed to do and you'll be blessed. And if you don't, you might be cursed. Sorry. This is what it is. That's
Just
what God
what it
says.
says. Yep.
So, we love you guys. We're going to finish Malachi 3 next time. I'm declaring it.
Perfect.
Come back next week for the end of Malachi 3. Maybe we'll do chapter 4 too, if you're lucky. But we love you guys. Have a great Friday night with Jesus and whoever else you are with. Bye.